Good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending my talk, which is titled Project Brainfog, Beyond the Facade, Exposing Smart Giants. This is basically related to hacking two controllers, different controllers, by the ABB company, which is Swiss/Swedish-based company, right? Any of you here present from on the conference working for ABB, maybe? No? Something? Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll ask questions later. So let me start by showing some smart giants, right? Smart giants means it's a building that has some kind of a smart building automation or building management system, building automation controller that controls the entire building regarding HVAC, regarding elevators, stadiums, chillers, anti-fire systems, etc., etc. A lot of components, a lot of different impacts. And this is basically started in 2024, but I'll get to that in a bit. So this is a National History Museum in New York. It has 25 buildings. It's a huge building that has a lot of different, maybe multiple controllers, ABB, Cylon, and ABB Aspect. This is the Saban Media Center, which it shows the Emmy Awards. So if you want to make someone from the famous actors or actresses sweat while they're receiving an award, you can manipulate this remotely because they're exposed online, on national television, live streaming, right? Some kind of church, the Church of Our Savior and the Chapel of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, New York as well, so churches. This is the HMRC, or His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, which is the UK government department responsible for collecting taxes, administrating benefits, and enforcing tax and outcomes laws. So government buildings as well, military buildings, residential buildings. This is the Nordstrom Central Park Tower, tallest residential building in the world, which is 472 meters. This is the better view, the tallest one that you see. It's using also ABB Cylon Aspect or Flexion, the two controllers. So you could have done something here as well if you wanted to from the black hat perspective. This is the Talkie-Walkie building in London. Additional titles or buildings I will show you. Jackson Correctional Institution, which is a prison in Wisconsin. You all know Burj Khalifa and Burj Al Arab, also using ABB Cylon building automation controllers. Dublin Airport Terminal 2. Google offices in Dublin for payments. So my name is Gjoko Krstic. I'm offensive security research at ING Netherlands and also founder and chief engineering or chief executive engineer at Zero Science Lab, which is a Macedonian information security research and development laboratory. The outline today, we're going to talk about motivation, what motivated me to start this, what is Aspect, 1,000 bugs or 800 plus 0 days, Flexion, impact and exposure, and takeaways. And it's an honor to share my story and journey with you guys on this presentation and conference. So why BUS and BMS? It's at the intersection of the IT and OT, controlling critical infrastructure in smart buildings. It has a high value impact, of course, and it has a weak security posture, as it is very normal for a building management controller to have, not done any source code review, for example. So legacy protocols, of course, lack of encryption and authentication, default credentials, that's the main attack vector, I would say. Patching is rare because uptime is prioritized over security. It's under the category of ICS, industrial control system, or process control systems. Because you can literally hurt someone's, or threaten the life of a human being within the building, because it uses components that are actuators or motors that you can close doors or increase the heat or maybe decrease the thermostat or sensor for the CO2. It can damage your lungs in a parking lot. MEP is a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing system. Mechanical is the HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Electrical is the power distribution for lights, backup systems, and plumbing is the water supply, drainage, fire suppression, meaning also the water pressure. or you can choose cold, hot. While somebody's showering, you can change that. Even the pressure, the pneumatic pressure machine, and also the temperature. Why not? So motivation, I'm fascinated by the cybernetic loop feedback system because think of thermostat, it has output which can be used as an input to the controller and then going back and forth, analyzing or sensing the temperature, and it reacts, giving back to the controller, and controller gives back some information, okay, keep it here or increase the temperature if it's going lower or higher, right? So that's the cybernetic loop. Control theory, control systems, and ICS OT security physical impact. Aspect is an application server, actually, based on Java. Accomplish a number of building operation routines and control algorithms. It's just a translation from the BACnet protocol or multiple protocols, Modbus, RTU, IP, KNX, Loanworks, and POP protocol, which is an older protocol. This is how it looks like, the embedded aspect control engine, but ASIA Brown Boveri is ABB. This is the controller. I think it costs around 6,000 euros, aspect. ABB Silent Aspect variants, you have Nexus, Matrix 2, Enterprise, Studio, the clients, mobile applications. Attack vectors are broad. There are more controllers and product ranges, which is the Flexion, and then we'll hack these later because the initial target was Aspect. And the way we approached that, it was in a security operation project that we saw the BMS on a flat network, which means there's no segregation, and that's a dangerous thing to do. American Automatrix developed Aspect in 2008, which is an American-based company. In 2013, Silent Controls, which is a subsidiary or a project that was born from the University of Dublin, they created a company called Silent Controls. They bought American Automatrix in 2013, and then in 2020, ABB adds Silent Controls to its smart buildings portfolio, right? So ABB decided to jump into the building management system world, I guess. So this is all business numbers. We don't care about that. This is a short intermission, let's say, because a lot of marketing teams are adding these type of, selling points for the suppliers, for the clients. SSL or HTTPS is in use, higher security standards, remote control using a browser. Cyber criminals are crafty. This is an actual quote from the documents from the sales and marketing team from ABB. But ABB Silent Aspect puts some extremely effective barriers in their way. Integration with SSL and HTTPS takes security to a whole new level of fortification against hacking and unauthorized intrusions. Right? Safe. And then, of course, they have a 21C FR11 system, which is for logging to see who did what where. It's in the controller itself. This is the timeline, basically 2008, as I mentioned, 2013, 20, and then in 2022, ABB gets a security report for 2 vulnerabilities in Aspect in 2022. And in 2024, I reported to ABB 1,000 vulnerabilities, from which 800 plus are 0 days, right? And I'll explain later what happened there exactly. So they say enhanced security, but I don't think so, right? It's never done from 2008. It's an old firmware, maintained functionality-wise, but not security-wise. So the real Aspect enhanced system security evolution starts in 2024. Actually, it started before I reported the vulnerabilities in April. They released a new version in March 2024, which actually fixed some of the issues. Silent fixing, of course, no CVE, no information to the end users, PDF advisory, nothing happened, right? So I had to research that, what happens with the documentation and the publishing of such things. So no secure code review. When you see that in the code, because it's like, there are like around 250 plus PHP files, you get to wonder, okay, what can I do here now? Because this is where the name Brainfog came into my head, let's say, because I had literally a brain fog for 2 weeks, because the more you dive deeper, the more you found crazy, silly bugs, let's say, right? So you cannot go home, or not go home, sorry, go take a nap, because you're really intrigued what else is there? What is next? Because there's like, I assume that it's from one developer that worked for Automatics, then changed to ABB for 15 years. Right? One developer. I assume it's one developer. This is a typical building automation system network topology or architecture. I'm not gonna, detail this, but as you can see, there's a firewall there, there's a cloud, there's a remote management you can connect, and then you have the automation level, which are the gateways and networks, the PLCs and HVAC. Then you have the field level, IP cameras. Anything can happen. You can add anything from device perspective, right? Even in the ICS environment, right? In power plants, in, energy plants, oil refineries, everything that controls a building. And it can be connected also to put down the blinds, turn off the lights. Not scary, but impact can be devastating. And subsystems are, okay, so attack vectors includes external access, of course, network protocols, components, devices, threat vectors, and impact zones. The vendor has published a document titled Network Security Best Practices. And they say 5 times, I just removed 3, just show you 3. Don't expose your devices to the internet, right? Under no circumstances should ABB silent BEMS or building energy management system should be exposed to the internet. Adopt a zero exposure policy for ABB silent devices on the internet. They say it 5 times, right? But they create their own architecture with these images, and it's very important because the clients and the suppliers don't understand maybe from security perspective or from the technical perspective what happens when you implement these type of systems. Why would you put them online? And this is exposed a lot. So I talked about the vendor about the documents. They say, which document is this? We don't know. There was kind of a misalignment between internal teams within ABB. It's a huge company, so that's expected. I tried to search M&A because they bought, right? Cylon Controls bought AAM, ABB bought Cylon, and then they rebranded the controller with the logo, with ABB red tapes and everything, right? But no security. So I wanted to know what is the M&A policy. So this is the only thing I found online, and it says data security at the bottom. ABB reviews all potential mergers and acquisition. Integrity risks are assessed and informed. Post-close ensures proper integration of all entities, employees, anti-bribery, antitrust, trade, human rights, and data security. That's it. No pen test done, no nothing. This is a BMS on a flat network. This is the main control login prompt for the control panel, PHP. Firmware version timeline, it's not that much important, but just to distinguish it, April 2009, they released the first version. So January 2020, ABB released the 3.3.3 version. Question mark, because I'm not sure anymore. Everything is like a mess. So in March 3.8.1, 2024, that's red because they really actually fixed some code in PHP. And then August 3.02, 3.4, and this is all from my research. And I'll explain as we are nearing that. So what I could do in this security operation project, I could just dump the firmware from remote controller, right? Locally, of course, but I couldn't test against a real device. Eventually, they sent me the device, but the other one, the Flexion, because the first one is more expensive, I guess. So, but I didn't have time to test it because it was sent to me after 7 months. Java, PHP, Bash, JavaScript code, ELF binaries, of course, and Linux kernel modules. 1 specifically. This is how it looks like, the HTML root folder with all the PHP, and then there's a mix directory here, mix, and that's actually the folder where the Aspect FT application server resides. And I'll get to that in a bit. So I had to do mixjar, right? The mixjar is the Aspect FT, which is the HMI of the controller, because you can control things, right? You can control dampers, close air valves, or filtering of the air, or melt an ice rink, There's a hockey tournament, and you just decide to melt the ice rink. So no go, people want to get their money back. It's going to be frustrating. But differential analysis has been done thoroughly, reverse engineering and source code review. I use Vim to just see what has added or been added to the mix.jar, which is the, again, Aspect FT is mixed jar. And they separately, there's a separate company developed, I guess, to maintain that software itself. It's from AM Automatrix, American Automatrix, and then they just decided to maybe, separate company. This is the diffing of HTML root, which is just whatever has been changed I needed to see and then dive into. So bugs in buildings, trademark, 800 0 days vulnerabilities. I have warned you because there are silly bugs ahead. I will show you some of them which are silly, some of them are funny, some of them are cool, because of course the main disclaimer from the vendor is not to publish the device online. Don't expose your controller online. But when you do Shodan, of course you will find 1,000 and more buildings exposed. Famous buildings, as I showed you in the beginning. And I try to contact those suppliers, those vendors. Hey, you guys have vulnerability in your building. Because there was like previous experience with, in 2012, Billy Rios talked about building management systems, and Google offices in Australia got hacked in 2016, I think, which they addressed. But now, even if I try to contact, they don't understand what I'm talking about. It's not a product of ours. We don't care. Facility managers are not to be found. And you can do damage, of course, people's lives, not just business impact, right? To turn on the pool on the roof must have a leak from Hackers movie, right? You can do that, and then you can destroy the equipment in the building commercial office, right? Obligatory Volstat charts, 436 high issues, 443 medium, and 135 low. This is from a SaaS tool. Doesn't matter which one. It's just because it's plain old playground for default easy bugs in PHP or, for web. It's webby stuff. The admin control panel, I will show you some kind of fixes, let's say, CalDAV util. It's fixed because it uses exec directly, and then they used escape shell arguments functions, something like that, right? In the green. So it's not important. This is a POC, which you can just do without authentication. I'll explain that later. Code execution, right? YAM settings. That's you. When you have statements like don't expose your device to the internet, why would you have a YAM script or YAM settings PHP program, right? When you run this program, it automatically updates the Linux operating system, the kernel, remotely on the internet, right? So it has egress traffic, but not ingress? I don't think so. So it's all about confusion. They jumped really soon with it and then just rebranded and never did a security. And yeah, I don't like it, guys. SSH update added authentication. The require once validate header on the right side is problematic, and this is the main script for authentication. So you can imagine, because they say, hey, don't expose to the internet, they were programming with functionality in mind more. Download DB path reversal fixed, silent fix in 381. So off the record, on the Qt, and very hush. This is for LA confidential. Practice involves addressing a security flaw without disclosing because of not wanting to draw attention to the attackers, right? But it's not good because of the latest CRA and IEC 443, 62443 standards. You gotta report and you gotta CVE any bugs in your software, even older ones. So, this is what they introduced in 381 in March, right? They released this new version. What has unaddressed in 381, they added a lot of scripts. It's complicated, but yeah, some kind of validation, but it's still not doing justice. Search for missing and or disabled authentication, because when I search for begin authorization, that's the main comment for the input require validate header. You can find all of these files that can be accessed without authentication directly, either, right? It's like a straightforward. Some authentication checks were also commented out with double forward slashes. Maybe in debugging, I'll show you something. And some of the authentication is conditioned. For example, if the content post parameter is not set, then require authentication. If you set it, then it's not going to require authentication, right? Silly bugs, guys. And this edit override, That's the edit override PHP. That's the main expert usage only, that you can just override and enable debugging or change the everything basically. It's really dangerous script that you can use. And it was online exposed and you can access it without authentication. User properties is the main file. Authenticate PHP is the checking for credentials. When you go to light HTTP configuration file, you see that you cannot really easily access and read the password file. The password file is guest, which is guest AAM user. The password is default, right? Default password. Hex encoded. That's it. No encryption. CloudLove installed. This is what is not addressed in 3.8.1 when they released it, right? So it's like half patch or semi patches. Badass mode, this code is present in Google offices, for example, in Dublin, right? This is the thing that is present in the walkie-talkie building. Badass mode, expert mode, you know what it means. You can specify the expert mode up, and then you will see the skip MD5 test here. Easy, right? So CloudLove upload is the usual script, and it checks for PHP version specifically, but basically you can just upload. It has to be BlackAlps project for calendaring, right? Advanced calendaring functionalities, to be able to install without a specific version. And they skip the checksum, right? Because the checksum has some kind of specific version with the checksum, and then it directly fetches it from GitHub. So you can skip that and then upload your own BlackAlps program, .zip, which you can insert a boot, a backdoor, right? And this is the result. So I cannot show you an animation, but this is an example of an exploit that works. And then you can see 144 BlackAlps HTML backdoor.php file. There was some kind of criteria to meet if you wanted to pass some kind of checks, but this is like unauthenticated. In 3.8.1 was present, in 3.8.2 they fixed it silently. Because when I reported to the vendor, I reported 2 or 3 proof of concepts with proof of concept scripts, not all of them, and they started to fix them and then immediately released a version 3.0.2, and they lied that, why didn't you send me the firmware? When you published it, they said, oh, this is reported by another security researcher. And then later it turns out that they changed the advisory to say, thank you, Gjoko, because this is it. So I don't know why they lied like that. Nothing personal, right? Calendar file delete, that was the presented. So you have the unlink functionality, and then same script that uses the success line 14, but then at line 28, file name is the same, right? File name, right? In the get file name line 3, you have file name get file, but it's success. On line 14, it checks for the included characters. So I could traverse because at line 28, the success parameter is not applicable there. So you skip validation like this. Silly bugs, right? Same as, you can do code execution, pre-authentication. There's a code execution as well in services update. They just changed something. So they did know about it while I was talking with them. They just, didn't fix it. They left it open. So in 3.0.2, what happened is they reportedly fixed 2 CVEs, which they lied. They fixed it, but string post usage can be bypassed. The A parameter first is that you contain the string, and then you traverse, and then you can read the password file. This is on with W3 schools. This is how you can bypass it. It's a bit unorganized from their side. They added authentication from the right side only, but they skipped the code execution part on the, So I keep digging further because PHP, okay, there's a BACnet MSTP protocol, which is a serial connection protocol that uses daisy chaining topology to connect with devices and then one by another, master-slave token parsing. It uses twisted pair cable, of course. This is a Valve controller, for example, and that bus controller, and then you have requests for request token for master. It applies, it acknowledges, and then you can communicate with that thermostat or something. And there's a frame, of course, involved. So there's a buffer overflow in MSTP KO, which is specifically designed from ABB. And I'm not going to go into details. There's a full report separately for this to read more about it. I also detected the IOCTL's functions because it's non-strip binary. And basically the problem is that kmalloc is assigning 501 bytes, but because of the previous frame, it was not resetted. You can just add it up in the loop. And the problem is in the loop, line 69, that's the loop, the while loop, right? This is the problem. Again, not gonna do anything. An example of MSTP traffic, no plans of corrective measures till this day. Jumping to the human-machine interface code, there was an unauthenticated servlet inclusion, bridge from admin control panel to ng admin, which is HMI, aka JSON proxy. So the JSON proxy looks like this. On the left side, you have simple file without authentication, without filtering, and then it uses localhost. So, and they fixed it, of course, and I reported it, but that gave me an idea, why is it like this syntax, localhost, without requiring authentication? So it means that when you run something from within the controller, it doesn't require authentication. So this means that you see JSON proxy PHP port 7226, the default port listening for AspectFT, HMI. You can download project and then you can disclose user credentials in plain text, unauthenticated. Then I found out that authenticated HTTP servlet authorized function has this if host equals localhost or equals 127, return true for authorized. So what I did is just specify the host at the end, unauthenticated at all, like authentication bypass. You can leak credentials, you can execute code, and they just remove this project info because I reported this in the JSON proxy. And they removed project info because for the POC, I provided project info.java. They just removed that. On the right side, it's 3.08.3 version. Later, because we stopped communication for reasons unknown, they say due to an issue in configuration code that was intended for debugging purposes. But as you can see, you have authenticated group manager, user manager, you can add users. Why would this be under the debugging? And a lot of these servlets can be used for uploading, writing, execute code. Another many possibilities, of course, we can use these servlets or enumerations to upload jar, whatever, with this same trick. So I can use a path traversal host 127.0.0.1. You execute code with root, and Linux is used, of course. But you see the group is root. So there's yet another debugging code. Method, so requires authentication false if the user agent is one of these Java 1, or JSEP. Kind of funny, but this is an example how you can change a temperature, or you can enumerate all the connected endpoints and devices, and then you can devise a script, like a C2 command and a control, and then do whatever you want. That's the logic. It's really simple. Point right explains everything. More root, okay, we needed to obscure authentication bypass. There's a problem like this. Once you type guest and guest, it says invalid admin username and password. So, okay, it doesn't work, right? In the code itself, you see the message on 37 line, invalid admin username and password. You can see down, invalid username and password, fine. But in the top 24 line, authentication is looking new, and then it checks for credentials which are true. Guest is valid credentials. It just checks in the mixed admin line 31, I guess. To group, if it's not working, it's gonna, if it's working, it's gonna detect, redirect to a setup PHP. Otherwise, it's gonna say, invalid admin username and password. The session is created. Client side, it says invalid admin username and password. So you can just go directly to, this is the valid header. You can go to setup PHP and you can just be presented with the admin control panel like this. Silly bugs, right? Crazy. This is the exploit for that remote root exploit code. This is where I managed to execute code as root. The backnet building control. So Silent Control released this in 2019. ABB bought it in 2020, and they immediately did in 22nd of November. They introduced this as their own, of course. This is how it looks like. On the right side, you have the Belimo actuator or damper control. You can, really physically rotate a device that can close air valves on the controller itself. 400 euros. Main interface, the HMI. You can see FCU. You have boiler system, pumps, chiller system, trends, alarm. Node.js, not Java. It's using Node.js. You can, do the routes, check for process creation as you would, right? 20 root remote code execution, 2 are unauthenticated. This is login.js, and the login, it's 10, of course, critical. You have the injection in the number 3 down, in the password parameter, because it reads the shadow files. Yeah. And this is the POC. So please tell me there's a backdoor. There's a backdoor, of course. They added the backdoor as a system. They just removed it later. It says, yeah, this is not necessary because it's not needed anymore, and it causes security impact. That's the main reason. This is a failed attempt to use WebSockets.js, but it doesn't fails because it's using spawn instead of exec in Node. So, exposed, operational harm, pressure, business impact, right? First reported, as I mentioned, the CVS has gone wrong a lot. They rated vulnerabilities and impact a lot wrongly. I got assigned 69 CVs, and it should be like 200. Problems with this. This is the timeline of how the CVEs are gone, progresses, right? And this is the 2025, 24. The vendor communication is a bit complex. There's a white paper, guys, but I haven't uploaded it to the internet, which is 160 pages, but you can read more details on that one. So basically, the communication, you can check it out later. A lot of slides. Case studies, this is how I found out what they have where, right? Accenture headquarters in Italy. Like, I don't know, Haven House in Antwerp, Belgium, uses building silent control or Flexion control, right? University of Dublin, walkie-talkie. These kind of informations are really easy to find like this, suppliers. And this is McMaster University in Canada that uses building ABB silent control for preserving the pictures, the images, the paintings in an environment and energy savings. So you can manipulate that and destroy hundreds and millions of dollars of worth of art, right? Natural History Museum, huge. What can go wrong? They warned us in the past. Backdoor and object could shut down a building with monthly. I've seen a lot of things, right? Animal shelters, you can turn off the underfloor heating, animals to freeze, right? Dogs and cats. Stuff like that. Building on reality. Something like that, building automation controller, they just stopped heating in Finland. What can be happening, right? A quote from Levi Tali Ashraya. Biggest threat is that no one appreciates the risk of building automation because even if you data breach, nobody cares in ICS about data. They care about stability, right? Availability. So if you change that, you can hurt people's lives.
Sorry, Gjoko, to interrupt. Can we come to a short conclusion? I guess that your slide will also be available.
Yeah, this is the demo. This can be done as well. And hiding CVEs and downplaying severity risk management isn't risk. It's risk manufacturing. M&A without security due diligence imports legacy backdoors and unpatchable liabilities. It's negligence 18 years without SSDLC. Still, right? Everything is patched. Not everything, but it's patched for now. An example of 25 accidents because engineering overconfidence cost lives. 6 PDF advisories from ABB only. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.